became good friends over time. Seeking retribution, we are faithful to the end. We're gonna cross that line.
Hello and welcome to the West Tigers Faithful podcast, WTF. I don't even know what number episode this is. And that's not because we've recorded plenty of them. It's because we certainly have not recorded many. I am Jared Reedy. I am back for the first time in God knows how long. And with me is my partner in crime, Mr. Joe McDougall McCord. How are you, mate?
Pretty good, mate. As years go on, I think I look more and more like the Mad Dog if you look at the horror show on top of my head.
Well, you are looking very much like a toe ball. I mean, I think we should probably get the video up for everybody on YouTube this week, so everybody can put a face to the claim. But mate, before we really jump into what this episode's about, I wanted to say that today the West Tigers Faithful podcast is powered by Pinch. You happen to have a bit to do with the guys at Pinch. Do you mind sort of running me through who they are and what they do?
Yeah, for those who are watching, you might be able to tell that I'm in some sort of box designed for recording, and that's actually in the Pinch offices. So Pinch Payments are a payment system designed to help small businesses improve their cash flow by offering their customers easier ways to pay their invoices. It plugs into systems like MYOB and Xero and QuickBooks. So, you can do things like capture your customers' payment details and then automatically take the invoice payment. So it's good for businesses that do recurring payments, pool shops, gardeners, even like domestic cleaners, any service business that invoices to receive payments. And your Pinch Payments have decided to sponsor the podcast for us today and give us access to this beautiful studio that hopefully makes the sound a little bit more smooth too.
Mate, your voice typically sounds like velvet, but today it looks like that purple stuff that Prince used to wear in the 80s. Mate, besides closing deals, we've also been doing a fair bit of living. What have you been up to?
Yeah, mate, Joe McCord Australian tour in full swing. Been just traveling around doing the conference tour. Was doing the Xero Roadshow, so I visited Launceston and tried the James Berg's beer from the source. Visited Adelaide and tried the Coopers from the source. Visited Canberra and tried the Capital from the source. And then I went up to Cairns and I went to that. Ever been to Cairns? You've been to Cairns before, right?
I've been to Cairns twice, and I will never go back. Gilligan's, I left a piece of my soul there.
I can't remember what the name of the place is, but right near the casino, there's a really nice brew pub on the water. It's like Hannigan's or something like that. And I went there, and it was pretty sick. So I've been drinking myself stupid around Australia while on the job.
Mate, going to the Cooper's Brewery, it would have been great to head there. I've got a great anecdote about fucking Cooper's Red. When I was at university, a very, very poor journalism student, my average marks were in the toilet. But me and my mates, we always used to drink Cooper's Red because while it was $70 a case, we managed to work out that it was about $1.60 per standard drink. So because obviously it's about 2.7 per stubby. So a 6-pack off it would have you rocking side to side in your early 20s. At that point, I hadn't put on any weight, so I was a goner by that point. But yeah, some of the great times down in the Gulf. But look, everybody's here to not hear us chat shit. They are here to hear us chat shit about West Tigers. And while we might be back, West Tigers have not been back for about 12 years, and they still suck.
Unfortunately, very true. Five wooden spoons across the grades is the meme that's getting around that I'm getting belted over the head with by all my mates. So it's hard to see this year as much of a success, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get to sort of grading the season and whatnot later, but the way that it ended, I think everybody forgot pretty quickly what happened 2 weeks previous against Manly at Leichhardt. I was at Spoon Bowl, and even myself, the eternal optimist and West Tigers apologist, was pretty disappointed with how that ended. But,
Yeah.
but look, we'll get to that. What we are here to do today is to put together an end of season podcast series. So what we're going to do is that we're going to have today one full end of year team review. So it's going to be team stats, team performances, the performance of the coaches, and so forth. But what we're going to do in future weeks is review each player, but we're going to split that into 3 episodes. So forwards, backs, and anyone who played in the spine. Okay. We might do a pathways review, and Joe and I have spoken about doing an NRL review and sort of talking about not necessarily all 16 teams in depth, but the best scandal and the best game and best storylines and all those sorts of things, providing that there is an appetite for people to listen to that.
We might do a review of ex-West Tigers across the other teams, Luke Brooks watch or something.
Oh, do you really want to go down that path? I'm scarred enough as it is. Look, I'm one of the people that's actually delighted for Brooksy. I think there's a few people death riding him, especially after that press release that Shane put out. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time. But once all of this is wrapped up, we'll be nearing the 2025 preseason. Our departures list will have been announced because our end of awards night is on October 11. And we'll do a preview around there. I still think I actually know that there's a lot of player movement that's still going on, particularly around selling players, and I'm sure we will acquire some as time goes on. So I feel as if it's incorrect to preview the season without knowing completely, having most of the dots connected. You agree, Mac? You happy with that? I don't think I've run this past you.
Sounds good to me, brother.
All right, mate. Well, let's crack on. So the first thing that I want to do in regards to this review is talk about some season-wide statistics. Now, first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to the Rugby League eye test. For those of you who are not familiar with the eye test, he is the GOAT. Okay. When it comes to Rugby League statistical analysis, he knows everything. Okay. And some of the complex stats you quite simply couldn't have dreamed of 5 years ago. So if you're not familiar with his work, go and read his work. If you are familiar with his work, go and support it via his Patreon or his PayPal. In addition, I use some stats from the Fox Sports Lab and NRL.com. Now, let's get into it. I want to talk about points. Now, not necessarily how many points we averaged the game or anything like that. I want to talk about a little metric called expected points. Now, expected points is very similar to expected goals in soccer, depending on where a player takes a shot, the type of shot it is and the chance it will end up in the net. Now, it's very similar in rugby league in terms of field position. So it might be that if you've got to play the ball on the right tram line on the third tackle, 25 meters out, that, it might be potentially a 35 or 40% chance of scoring. Whereas if it's Charlie Staines rucking the ball out 2 meters out from his own line, chances are it's 0.001% chance of coming up with a try. So with that in mind, it gives you an idea of field position and how many points teams should be scoring depending on their field position and where the ball is played every possession. Have we got that? Mac, have you got that? Was that a good explanation?
That was an awesome explanation because I actually didn't think that was what it was at all. So now I'm on the same page as you, thankfully.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, with that in mind, I want to talk about the attack first and foremost. Per game, we were expected to score 18.5 points per game. We scored, drum roll please, 19 actual points. So we actually attacked to expectation. In defense, it was a different story. We were expected to leak 19.25 points per game. We actually conceded 30. So straight away, that tells you where some of the issues lie. Okay? Matt, what do you think of that straight away?
So am I understanding correctly that it kind of implies that it doesn't mean that we're like attacking at the league average. It just means that like our attack is at the, like our try scoring and our point scoring ability is at the level expected for what the performance on the field looks like, kind of? Like, is that a kind of
pretty much
summary?
Yeah, based
So,
on field position. Okay. So,
yeah. So
you know,
what it seems like to me is that like in attack, when you're watching this game, you go like, we're scoring the tries that we seem like we should be, and we're not scoring tries that we seem like we shouldn't be. But in defense, we're just conceding like crazy shit like that. Like if we're like a whole like third above average, it would seem like that means that teams are scoring more freaky tries, long range tries, more consistently on us. Um, because if I correctly understand it, like if it was purely relative to field position, it would probably mean that like the expected points conceded would have been higher too, but the expected points conceded are lower. Is that fair?
yeah, mate, you've nailed it. So, to give you an idea, we actually conceded 282 more points than what we should have across the entire season.
That's
So,
a lot of wins.
so if you base that on for and against, we would have been -5 for and against.
Yeah, so we would have finished ninth.
Yeah, we would have. No, the Knights had -40 for and against, so we would have finished 8th.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, of course, you need to win those games. And Canberra are a side that continually outperform their expected points conceded because they're just one of those teams that cannot attack. So, look, with that in mind, attack, we performed to expectation. In defense, we were allowing more point scoring opportunities to opponents than what was anticipated by this statistical metric. Okay, let's move on. In attack, so we were 16th for average play the balls per game, meaning that we were spending plenty of our time defending, whether that was through, conceding penalties or set restarts, or simply just teams having a good run of possession against us. Okay, we conceded the 3rd worst amount of run meters in the league. Okay, so teams were just running through us at will. Complemented by, and I think everybody could see this via just looking at our games, the worst running meters in the entire league, okay? Now, while some halves, like Mitchell Moses, can put a decent end on a poor yardage set by finding a kick that lands in the 10 by 10 box, we were the worst in the league for kick meters. Our opponents were starting their sets, get this, on an average of 40.6 meters upfield. They couldn't even kick a fucking 40-20 because they were already outside the 40. So that points to yardage and kicking. So straight away, I feel as if Mac, and I remember us talking about the Cowboys game in Townsville where the kicks weren't long enough. We weren't getting out of our own end. It actually reaffirms a lot of the things that we saw and we felt through the season. Do you feel the same?
Yeah. I think that it should be really easy to fix. And I felt like that in the running a lot of the time watching the games. Like, things like not taking a kick on play 4 just to like make a listless 6 meter extra carry puts all the pressure on the kicker on play 5, which leads to a shittier kick. It's like, just take the earlier kick because the wingers haven't dropped back. You got more space to kick into. Like, these just decisions that just were not being made like time and time again. Obviously wouldn't have been helped by, the disrupted season Aiden Caesar had. Not to say that he was like a masterful kicker, but he was definitely better at those general play kicks than anyone else that we had on the field this year. And he missed a lot of time through suspension and injury. And as the year got better, I noticed Lachlan Galvin's kicking game seemed to improve. Like, his long kicking game seemed to improve. He got really good at putting the ball in, as you say, the 10 by 10 box. But any other half that we ran out throughout the year, no bueno. Jaden Sullivan's kicking game earlier in the year when he played was abysmal. And then obviously, yeah, of course, you don't want to be always in a situation where you're having to kick it out of your own end. But even like, I guess what I'm getting at is that when you are in a situation where you're kicking out of your own end, there are simple ways to go about doing it that we just were not doing every single time. And also, like, I think it speaks to, obviously the size of our outside backs was an issue. And, we've sought to fix that with the signing of Skelton and Taruva, who's not a big guy, but he's good at meterage. The pack was not getting on top of the opposition packs outside of the beginning of the year. But even still, we were not doing the simple things that other teams consistently did to us, which was, that mid-set shift to get that extra 10, 20 meters on tackle 3, tackle 4, and get the opposition on the back foot. So you're kicking on the 50 or, 45 out from the opposition line instead of from deep inside your own half. Just two simple things that just did not seem to be drilled into the game plan that every other team does.
What I will say to that is that they actually learnt to do that midway through the season, but by that point, it was too late. Now, you mentioned Skelton Taruva. There's obviously links to Montoya and Brian Toto. Whether or not those are legitimate, we'll see. But with that in mind, mate, I want to bring us back to yardage and break it down. So, as mentioned, we are the worst in the league for run meters, okay? Our poor yardage game is evidenced further, again, shout out eye test, when you look at the average meters past the play the ball we made on each tackle, okay? So every team is given a rank. So I would say hypothetically Penrith or the Dogs would be ranked first. I reckon they make probably 9 or 10 meters per carry, okay? So every team is given a rank. We were ranked 12th for play 1. So we were 12th in the league for the most amount of meters made on play 1. We were 17th on play 2. So hypothetically, let's say Charlie Staines takes that play 1 carry. He gets put on his back and dominated. The opposition defense has a lot of time to get ready for the next person. And lo and behold, it's Solomon Afatape, and he makes 3 meters, okay? So we were 12th on play 1, 17th play 2. We were then 14th for play 3. Really, really bad. So straight away, those first 3 plays, the opposition are killing us. We were ranked 9th on play 4, but by this point, either a forward had 1, taken a carry, or 2, we've shifted the footy, but I reckon that probably happened in the later part of the season, okay? So straight away, the yardage game isn't good enough, and they've had to recruit in order to fix that. Now, as everybody knows, the backs are arguably their most important job besides scoring and saving tries is to ruck the ball out of a team's sort of
defensive end.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. I was going to cut that out. I'm not going to cut that out now. The backs at West Tigers are responsible for about 40% of our run meters each game. The back 3, so the fullback and 2 wingers, any sort of combination, we're responsible for 27.4% of that of all of our run meters. And then the centers, we're responsible for 13% of our run meters. So Fatape, Naden, Olam, Toa, whoever else you wanted to throw in there, Filetti, clearly weren't pulling their weight when carting the ball out, all right? And further to that, Junior Tupou, I think, was a massive loss in the early part of the season, and we'll talk about that later. Now, you mentioned the pack, and obviously the pack were already on the back foot. That's reflected by the fact that West Tigers has no forwards in the upper quarter percentile for any run metric. So that's any expected amount of meters they're due to make, how many meters they actually make. We don't have anybody in the top 25%, okay? Clemmer is our best, but he sits below the just below the upper quarter at 72. Stefano is in the 68th percentile, and he catted it for half of the year. And Fanua Bole was 64th. I haven't even got a ranking for Alex Twal. So straight away, I look at it and I look at our recruitment for next year, and we're still lacking that forward that can put us on his back and drag us through. Because while Royce Hunt can do that, he can only do it for 15 minutes. Hearing this, Mac, what do you think?
So there's a few things that I was looking at as you were reading out those stats. And the first one I want to kind of point out is that I think that the fact that we were 9th on play 4 might actually be not what it looks like, because if you think about where play 4 occurs on the field most of the time, I imagine our play 4 occurred in our own half more often than it did for any other team. So we were probably still running a meterage play on play 4, and a lot of other teams' play 4s were probably deep on the attack. So they probably didn't have as much meters that they could have actually made on that play anyway. So I would suggest that play 4 carry is probably not even really worth looking at. The other 3 being as low as they are, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world when you see, like, it just passes the eye test. The centers versus the wingers, I don't know if I necessarily agree that it specifically like calls out the centers, because obviously there's three in the back three and there's only two in the centers. So the back three are gonna account for a higher percentage just numerically, but so too in normal games, wingers tend to have higher meters and fullbacks have higher meters than centers. So I wouldn't say that it's a real sign that Fatape and Naden and Olam weren't pulling their weight as much as it's just all five of the back five were just not damaging and not making tackle breaks. You're 100% bang on. The missing Junior Tupu for the majority of the season was a huge loss. We were actually in pretty good nick. I thought, like, when he went down earlier in the year, I think we were like, what, 2-2 or 2-3, 3-2, something like that. I can't.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, he goes down, and we went on like an 11-game losing streak or whatever it was. Like, so he was an incredible loss, and we never recovered from it. I'm surprised that Stefano wasn't in the upper quarter percentile for tackle breaks. I thought he would have been, unless you're measuring here only in like run meters and stuff. Like, did you look at tackle breaks?
No, he did break tackles. He was leading the league at one point, but no, I didn't have that, and I do apologize. But
that's all right.
It was simply to do with run meters.
Yeah, fair enough. And Bole, I reckon Bole probably would have been in the upper quarter if he was the starter all year, because he definitely can get through the meters better than the others. And I really questioned his usage throughout the year, being moved from the bench to the pack and back to the bench to the pack, and constantly rolling out Clemmer and Uterka Manu, even though Uterka Manu was like visibly had, you know, one foot out the door the whole time, and Clemmer, you know, 1 foot in the fucking grave. So I really question Bole's usage. I thought he had a really good season. I think he's a pretty good. He must be a short price. I wouldn't say favorite, but he'll be in the running for our player of the year, I would suggest. Definitely will get forward of the year. I would imagine. Yet they couldn't find a consistent place for him in the starting pack. It was very strange. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Royce Hunt as a signing is an interesting one, because like there were games he played earlier in the year for the Sharks where he actually did play 35, 40 minutes. And he had some massive games. Like there was one game there where he had like 9 tackle breaks, nearly 200 run meters, and a try. And like there was one game that I remember the word on it was that he pretty much single-handedly won the Sharks a game earlier in the year himself. But then as the season got towards the end, they were only giving him 10 minutes, 15 minutes a game. It was quite strange. I don't know whether he can't do the meter. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether the issue is that he can't, as much as it was just Fitzgibbon's usage of him. My little bro is actually a big Sharks fan, and when we signed Hunt, he was pretty upset. He thought that they should have been looking to get rid of the likes of Hazelton instead, or Hamlin ULA. He thought Hunt was better. He said when Fitzgibbon actually uses Hunt's way more effective than the rest of them. So, yeah, I don't know if I think the jury's out on Hunt. I think if we can actually get 25, 30 minutes a game out of him, he'll be really, really useful. And I think it's probably also worth mentioning, like, Bole is only going to get better. He's still so young. We blooded Miller. Samuela Fainu had a great year. And I think Fainu is a pretty good candidate for being moved back into the middle of the field as his career progresses. And it might happen sooner or later if we can actually find decent back rowers. I think he was really only playing in the back row out of necessity because we really had no depth in the back row. So I think we might be okay there, especially if we don't have to rely so much on meterage from the pack. You know what I mean? Like if the pack don't have to be under so much pressure to have to be going up and down the field constantly because we're getting run off our feet. And, you know, somebody like Luai can come in and actually, with Galvin's natural improvement, you know, help us a little bit more out of dummy, with the general play kicking, Skelton and Taruva getting us off to better starts. Yeah, it might be a good enough pack for us to improve. If the other stuff doesn't happen, it's, I don't know, like it might not even be an improving pack, because like we've pretty much so far swapped out Uterka Manu for Hunt. Like that's, not. I don't think there's anybody aside from Tigers fans that would try to convince you that that's actually an improvement to the roster.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair school of thought. I think Tigers fans have a right to their opinion. I am one. I felt as if look, Royce Hunt doesn't miss tackles and he averages over 10 meters a carry, but the problem is his conditioning. So, mate, that's one for us to address.
Well, sorry. Before we move on,
But-
man, I forgot to mention Papali'i is leaving too, right?
he's the biggest loss.
Yeah. So like, if we're losing Papali'i and Uto Kamanu, and who will we sign in the pack? Jack Bird and Hunt. I mean, that's not improvement. The only way we're going to see improvement is if we make more signings, or if we can really get a lot more out of Bolle, out of Miller, out of maybe Tim Johansson. Some of these players that Tim Johansson, I think, will actually feature heavily next year in the first grade side. I think he'll have a good off season. Shout out to Adam, his dad, for reaching out to us and having a chat with us about Tim. Gave us some pretty interesting insight. That was a pretty cool chat. I think that's actually, I have some confidence that might happen, is what I'm getting at. Like, I'm kind of stuck between two schools of thought. I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm being like, we haven't made external roster moves that might improve things, but we have some progressive looking talent in the team itself that might improve things without needing it to come from the outside.
Yes, there is absolutely a massive preseason required, but I still think that we're an elite middle short. We hope that Stefano would be that guy. He catted it. Fanua could possibly be that guy, but again, I don't know. And they may be in the market for one, but that's one to discuss a little bit later. I just want to bring it back to attacking stats. So, as everybody knows, Robbie Farah was our attack coach this year. Robbie Farah will not be our attack coach in 2025. But his time as West Tigers attacking coach was quite interesting. He actually saw us play quite expansively. So, we had less possessions, as I said, than any other team in the league. But get this, Mac, we were the best in the league for line engagements, which is when a player takes the line on before passing or kicking. So that meant that we actually quite often would have a lock forward, players in motion, and then gets to the half and then the fullback and you draw and pass. We were third in the league for general play passes. So Tim Sheens would have been pretty satisfied with that. And actually fourth for offload. So we were actually keen to play second phase footy. We ranked sixth in the league for push supports, so that's just when a player is pushing up around the ball, which underlines that the players were actually putting in effort to get around players and being an option. That's always been an issue in the past at West Tigers. And we were also third for decoy runs, implying once again, like the line engagement stat, that we had a lot of bodies in motion. Other stats include being 13th for tackle breaks, 15th for forced dropouts, and 8th for the most errors in the comp. Finally, we had the 12th fastest play the ball speed in the league, which I personally attribute to poor conditioning because we just weren't strong enough to win the collision and we just don't have players that were able to do so. Any of those stats stick out for you, mate? Anything that you sort of want to touch on and sort of discuss?
Yeah, I'm surprised we were only 12th. It looked to me like we had the slowest play the ball of any team in the comp. Like, at least, like, we got dominated in that area, like, in every contest that I remember seeing, bar, like, the early round win against Canberra and stuff like that. But, yeah, most of the time it seemed like that we were, like, held down in the ruck and were unable to control the ruck. So we seemed like we were losing at the ruck, which has been the case for a decade. And it's, like, it comes down to just a mixture, in my opinion, of, like, not being as talented as other teams when it comes to the wrestle, not being as strong as other teams, which is related, and also being afraid to get penalized, not having like the confidence to defend on your own line means you just don't defend with any kind of attacking kind of. But anyway, I digress. We're talking about attacking stats. Farah, I don't know, man. I don't really ever feel like his heart was in it. Like, I feel like that's why he left after 1 year. Farah's not a coach, man. Never was. Like, Farah's Farah's a dude who is going to spend the rest of his life like coming up with like harebrained ventures and entrepreneurial dreams, and maybe he might like end up cracking one and becoming, one of those post-sport Adam McDougall bloody millionaires. He's not a coach. It's not. It's not his game. I don't know how much he really had to do with it. I mean, I didn't go down there and watch him every time. I wasn't watching them. I don't remember seeing him feature as much in the in the footage of the training sessions as much as Benji. That's for sure. Benji front and center and everybody attacking drills. So I don't really know if Farah was truly actually the attacking coach, if you know what I mean. I think Benji was probably really the attacking coach. Line engagements is an interesting one for us to be high on. Maybe we should have been doing less line engaging and more line running and hitting the line and running through it. I don't know, but I do remember really liking that about the way that like Sione Fainu and Justin Matamua were playing at 13 in the few games that they were playing there. I feel like they were doing that really, really well. It's probably honestly a testament more than anything to just like how much Lachlan Galvin affects the game, like because his hands on the ball multiple times a set, and he is a line engaging player. That's what he does. That is his bag. He attacks the line, and he'll either try to run through the line or he'll pass, and he does, put the line under pressure. That's his game. That's how he plays, and sort of Appy's game too. So it doesn't surprise me that is kind of like where our strengths appear to be. It's probably why our expected points ended up being high. So because we do look threatening in moments when we do stuff like that. Yeah, expansiveness. Yeah, I mean it's hard to say. A lot of these stats are so out of context because if we were getting pumped, of course we're going to throw the ball around. We have nothing to lose, right? If you're playing catch up football, it's going to produce stats like this, and obviously we're playing from behind. 70 to 80% of the time this season. So I don't really know how much I want to put into it.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, the negatives there, low tackle breaks, low for forced dropouts. Again, it's the same stuff as what's bearing out in the other stats. We just don't have attacking threats that can, run hard, run through tackles. We don't have wingers that can get, out of our own end from meters, and we don't have halves that are good in general kicks. So that's what we need to improve. We've just gone and signed Jerome Luai. It's probably a pretty good chance of winning a Daily M. Not the Daily M, but our team of the year.
I think you'll get 5/8 of the year, yeah.
And has proven himself to be a real halfback. Like he's probably been the best halfback this year. Like aside from Hughes maybe, but like him and Hughes have been the two dominant halfbacks this year because Cleary's been out so much. That's good. There's no way we're not going to improve in that respect. And Lachlan Galvin just had the best rookie season of anybody. I think anyone who has their eyes not painted on will say that. Like that was
mate, even Stevie Wonder would agree.
So like we're gonna improve in the halves, and we've gone and signed, a big lump. Gerald Skelton is a lump, bro, and he's gonna only get better, man. He might be. What do you think, Tuiaki 2.0?
That's what I called him when he was signed, but we'll see. But we'll discuss that sort of in the preview for 2025 and the subsequent episodes there. Mate, do you mind if I jump into defense?
No, please.
Okay. Well, straight away, Morris has some work to do. I want to give one positive. There is one slight positive, but by the end of the season, that positive was gone. West Tigers can be proud of their kick chase and line speed from the first half of the year. Okay, the second half, I don't have the stats. Okay, this is once again shout out to the eye test. They were the best in the league for restricting meters on play one, but also remember that we were the worst in the league for kick meters. So therefore, we wouldn't have, that long of a distance on kick chase. But that is, and we were the best subsequently after in regards to stopping players on their first tackle off the kick return. So we were first there as well. Play two, we ranked 9th. And then plays 3 and 4, we ranked 3rd and 7th, respectively. So again, line speed was there early. And once again, you could see that. Guys like John Bateman and Aiden Caesar were leading that line speed in the early parts of the season. But as I said, that's where it stops. Okay. We have the 3rd worst tackle efficiency in the league, meaning that our contact isn't up to scratch. So either we were producing ineffective tackles where teams were getting offloads away, or we were just dropping off tackles. To further that point, we gave away the 3rd fastest play the ball in the game this year. Okay. So therefore, we weren't really winning the collision ever. And we were obviously struggling in regards to wrestling. Further to this, we conceded 5.9 penalties in a game, which is the worst in the league. Not a surprise to anybody. Our discipline was disgusting. And we were awarded 5.5 penalties on average. Now, only the Sharks and the Roosters concede more penalties than us. But as everybody knows, the Roosters and the Sharks are top 4 teams and much better defensive sides than us. So clearly, we couldn't defend our mistakes. Here is the worst stat. We conceded a deplorable 6.9 line breaks on average per game. 7 line breaks a game. That is fucked. Mac, hit me. What do you think?
Well, there you go. That's what we were talking about with the expected point stuff, right? Like it was like we weren't losing because we were losing the game on the whole, on a macro, like on a play-by-play level. We were losing games because there would just be one moment where it would just all fall apart. Like, and somebody would just trample, one player would miss a tackle, one like freaky bounce, it's just the Tigers, man. It's what we've turned into. It's what we've been for years. Like team that just seems like they're fucking cursed. Like the ball doesn't bounce for them. They'll slip over. It's ridiculous. But fixable. And rugby league is a very interesting game compared to some other sports in that everything ties together. There's a synergy to it all. And, if you fix attack and defense becomes easier. You fix defense and attack becomes easier. And so it's not always just about really honing in on the defense and looking at the defense as the problem. Because, really, like, how much better would these defensive stats be if we did some of those things better in attack that we were talking about? Better general kicking, better, like, meterage out of our own end, putting the other team in worse positions when they're actually attacking us. However, I will say one thing I did notice, and it seems to happen all the time, and it's happened for a long time, is that we must be the worst team in the league when it comes to actually capitalizing on when we do put a good general kick in. Like, how many times do you see, like, when we do put that good 4th tackle kick in and we do pin them down in their own end, as a tackle 2 line break, or a tackle 1 kick return where they'll just like duck up the short side and make it back to the 40 anyway. That to me, like, yeah, that's probably comes down to inexperienced players as much as anything, just players who aren't anticipating things. And that's probably also why we're conceding so many line breaks. So look, I can't really say that any of our signings have been, those kind of defensive-minded signings. It definitely looks like our signings have all been designed to improve our attack. So I'm not 100% sure what the plan is when it comes to improving our defense, if it's not just by improving our attack.
Yeah, the only one that might improve it, and he's not even signed on yet, is Kobe Hetherington. But
well, I did a breakdown of Hetherington's stats, and I compared him to some players, and I mean, it may come as a shock to you, friend, but he's statistically an inferior player to Alex Seyfarth in almost every metric.
Does that account for his lack of minutes on the field, given that Alex played a lot more?
It was yes, I did account for that. Yes, it was very much like it wasn't a huge amount, but Alex scored more tries, made more tackle breaks. He was defensively, had higher tackle efficiency. He was a slightly better player than Kobe Hetherington, player for player, in the worst team in the comp. So then you have to imagine what they would look like in the other team's jerseys, are surrounded by better talent with less pressure on them. Would Alex Seafarth be an even better player if he was a Bronco playing the role Kobe played? I don't know. I don't know about this Kobe Hetherington signing. I mean, I'm not mad at it because Lord knows, like if we can improve the 19th best player in the team, that's a good thing. I just don't know if he's gonna come in and like be, a plug and play 13 that's gonna really make a difference for us.
It's a fair school of thought, and one that I haven't considered. I actually appreciate that we're having opposing views on things for a change, mate. But the last thing is some conclusions. So this is what I have. We were expansive with the football because our yardage game wasn't good enough. We constantly lost the field position battle because we couldn't get away from our own end. Our long kicking game was atrocious. We were terrible in contact and on the ground defensively, which led to quick play the balls for the other team. No doubt this led to a crazy amount of line breaks conceded. While our line speed was solid, as mentioned, for the first half of the season, teams were too close to our try line from the outset because they were starting their sets, once again, 40.6 metres upfield. Finally, West Tigers had far more defensive lapses than they should have, and that's reflected within the expected to actual point statistics in regards to how many they should have conceded versus how many they actually did. And finally, our attack performed to statistical expectation. Anything else,
Thank you,
mate?
Lachlan Galvin. Yeah, that's why our attack performed to statistical expectation, is because of the rookie, Lachlan Galvin. I would say that all these statistics tell a story that you can also tell without statistics. And it's great to see the statistics because what the statistics are good for is creating coachable rhetoric. So when you're actually talking to the players and you're asking them to improve and you're showing them where they're ineffective, play stems from, you can actually tell them this sort of stuff. It makes for easier coaching. I don't know who at the Tigers is looking at this stuff, because the fact that you and I always seem to drill down in stats and always pull out this stuff, and it never seems to actually end up changing anything on the field, or very rarely does it seem to change anything on the field, makes me wonder, I mentioned to you when we were chatting the other day, Benji Marshall, and we will talk a little bit more about him later. Benji Marshall does not seem to be an X's and O's, to use an NFL phrase or an American sports phrase, type of coach. He seems like the sort of coach that's like, go out there, here's the footy, have a crack, I'll be here for you, son. Kind of Wayne Bennett, Sheen's kind of bloke, although Sheen's was a little bit more of a tactician. But yeah, so like for me, I'm looking at it and I'm going, training wheels coach, inexperienced roster, halfway through the season, the freaking new CEO decided that he wanted to turn over half the roster and then couldn't get rid of them, and they all kept playing. So, I mean, that's why these stats say what they say. It's those three reasons, in my opinion.
Well said. Well said. All right. What I want to do now is that I want to kick into just looking at the season itself. I'm going to split it up into quarters. So we're going to look at, round our first 6 games, our second 6 games, our third 6 games, and our fourth. Okay. So we'll basically just run our eye over and sort of recall some memorable moments, and we'll go from there. Okay. So as everybody knows, because the NRL didn't want us on TV in round 1 after Vegas, and completely understandably so, we started our season in round 2. We went down to Canberra and lost 32-12. The week after, we had our best performance of the season by a country mile. We played our grand final in round 3. We beat, I'm used to saying loss. We beat Cronulla 32-6. The week after, we beat Parramatta 17-16. The week after that, we went up to Redcliffe and lost 26-16. We then came down to a sold-out Campbelltown and put in our worst performance of the year at that point, 24-12. And then finally, we went to Bathurst and played the Panthers and lost 22-6. Straight away, what I want to say is similar to what I said about Cronulla and the very, very professional and un-Tigers-like performance that we put in that day. I recall this as our best period, which is typically what happens under a new coach. New coach, new philosophy, new ideas, everybody buys in. That's how I felt. What do you remember from that time, Mac?
Well, I don't know how much you can say that Benji Marshall was a new coach. Like they've been listening to Benji Marshall's game plans and Benji Marshall's tactics and Benji Marshall's Benjiisms for a year at that point. So I actually feel like that we were going well too. I agree. I agree. It was the time of the year that we looked the best. Like you know that Dragons game where we lost 24-12, like that we played abysmal. We still only lost 24-12. We're in that game, like for the majority of that game, playing terribly. The Redcliffe game, I watched that one live. It was at Suncorp. We were in that game until the end. Like that game was winnable right till the end.
We also lost John Bateman and Samuel Afinu that night mid-game. Which hurt us as well.
But you know, I came out aside from the first game, the Canberra game, like that Penrith game was winnable too. They just did their Penrith thing and got away from us in the last bit. Like there was 4 winnable results there, and we won 2. So it's a pretty like you have reason to be optimistic after the first 6 rounds of the NRL, after the first 7 rounds of the NRL. Sorry, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe it was like not very long after that where Richo started tapping players on the shoulders.
There is that. Yes, he said after the first 7 rounds, he began to speak with managers and began to shop players. But you want to know something else?
Yeah.
Junior Tupou did his Liz Frank in that Penrith game.
There you go. Yeah. So, like, and you know what? Like, I mean, I'm not sitting inside of the boardroom at the West Tigers, although I probably should be. I'm not sitting there, so I don't know what the hell they're planning. But there's a certain like, all right, like this is Banji's first year. We've got a rookie 6. We've got Jerome Luai coming next year. We already know this. We got a bunch of players on the roster that we don't really view as, you know, players that we're going to win a grand final with. Do we really want to waste time like not making the moves that we know we need to make? Or do we want to just bin this thing and then use it as a training wheel season, knowing full well that it's going to, you know, we're going to piss off the fans, knowing full well that the media is going to go ape shit? Like, do you think that they really, like, as early as round 7? I feel like they might have, as early as round 7, just put a red line through 2024. Even though they had 6-point competition points after the seven rounds, like I feel like they still red penned it.
That's a fair school of thought, mate. It is. And you know what? I don't think anybody can discount that because, as we're about to get to, our results fell off a cliff. So while we were able to go set for set in a lot of these games and get in the grind, and there was plenty of effort and attitude in defense, we went into free fall. So second quarter, rounds 8 to 14, we lost to Brisbane at Campbelltown in our 20-year anniversary game. What was it? 25-year anniversary game. 34-10. We lost to Canterbury in a boil over 22-14 after being well ahead at halftime. We lost to Newcastle in the most boring, if not the worst game besides Manly and Souths this year, 20-14 in Tamworth. We lost to Redcliffe again. That was Appy's 200th. That was at Magic Round 24-12. That game that I mentioned a little bit earlier against North Queensland, we lost 42-28. And then finally, one of, if not the lowest point in our season when we lost to the Dragons, 56-14 after being ahead at halftime in Wollongong. So this was the period when we were effectively in free fall, okay? The first 2 games we were in it up to our eyeballs, so Brisbane and Canterbury, until halftime, and then we dropped off. Now, Brisbane was just sheer attacking brilliance from Adam Reynolds. The second half against the Bulldogs, we just didn't come out of the sheds. And we came out of the sheds with 10 minutes to go when Alex Seyfarth decided it was time to throw his body around. I will say also that Casey Badger did lose control of that match, but we were disgusting that day. Newcastle, we were atrocious. Redcliffe, we were never in it in comparison to the Redcliffe game the first time around where we were absolutely in it. We conceded 42 points against North Queensland despite some bright moments from Samuel Afinu and Lachlan Galvin. And then we hit rock bottom in the second half against the Dragons at win after free falling for so long. I remember a lot of sin bins, suspensions, and stupidity. The triple S, which we saw a lot, really setting in at this point. But there was some injuries to our top 17. So Tupou, who I mentioned, Caesar wasn't actually injured. He just didn't know how to tackle, and Papali'i was injured as well, and that began to kill us off. We didn't have the depth to deal with the setbacks, and ultimately it led us to getting pasted eventually by the Dragons. What do you remember, mate?
Very little. I'm very, very talented at repressing things I don't want to like, bring up and recall. But what I do remember pretty much echoes your analysis of each of those contests. I would say, aside from the Dragons game there and the Brisbane game, again, half those games we were in position to win them. I know you said we were never in that Redcliffe game, but Redcliffe never really, took us out of it either, if you know what I mean. Like Redcliffe didn't really rip the game away from us at any point. Two converted tries in it by the end of it. Any team can, turn it on for 5 minutes and score 2 tries. So that game was never out of reach. The Newcastle game was never out of reach. The Canterbury game, we had it in the bag. The North Queensland game, that was just a meme. But again, point I'm trying to make is if you go back to our stats review, if we had better performance in those like minutiae areas we were talking about, general kicking, meterage out of our own end, those like issues that we identify, that can prove to be the difference between winning the Canterbury game, winning the Newcastle game, and winning the Redcliffe game. And then we're looking again at splitting the rounds 8 to 14 games. So if I'm looking at this and I'm trying to like coach the team based on the figures, I can paint some positive pictures here. I can make it really easy and say, we're going back through the season review. I can pinpoint moments in all 3 of those games where a better general kick here. Yeah. No lapse in judgment in defense here. Actually spreading it 1 pass wider on this tackle to make an extra 15 here. And we're in this game and we win the game and we're going into round 15, with what would it be, like 14 competition points or whatever instead of whatever we had, which is 2/5 of fuck all. But again, I think that the Dragons are an interesting beast, right? At the start of the season, I had the Dragons and I had the Raiders and I had the Knights pegged as, being useless. Like I didn't think any of those 3 teams were going to compete, and I was proven wrong. The Dragons specifically match up exactly against us. Like their strengths are our weaknesses, and our strengths are not their weaknesses, if you know what I mean. So
it's like Canberra and the Jason Taylor years.
Correct. Yeah. So you got somebody like Moses Sully lining up against somebody like Fatape or whoever it is that he's lining up against. And Sully's particular game style is just power running, and that's our weakness. And you've got, Zach Lomax, who's seemingly his skill is just doing cooked freaky shit. And that's our weakness because of, the Ben Elias curse. But and I think that you look at the changes that we've made, they seem to, if you want to be a bit cynical, it seems to pretty much be like they watched that Dragons game and they went, oh yeah, I know what we need to fix now. And they based everything off of what went wrong in that Dragons game. But anyway, we could talk about shitty 6-game losing streaks all we want. Let's get to the next shitty streak.
Well, this was when I went to Europe. So,
oh yeah, when we had the windcasts.
Yeah. So, I got off the plane in Paris at 6 a.m. and I've turned my phone back off airplane mode and my phone just lights up because I knew that we were playing and I knew that it would have been close to full time that we were landing, and I didn't want anyone to say anything. And my old man goes, "Oh, we're about to win." And I went, "Holy shit." Now, from what I understand, we had no right winning that game, but we did 18-10 at Leichhardt. We had a couple of debutants that day, which was pretty cool. The week after, when I was in Amsterdam, was fucking legit. We beat Canberra 48-24 in what was, I think, probably our second or third best performance of the year. The week after, I was in Sweden. We lost to the Roosters 40-6. I remember being absolutely hammered. I went to bed. I went clubbing that night in Malmo. I then went to bed. I woke up and I saw we got pasted. We then lost to Melbourne in what was a reasonable performance, but they were depleted. We lost 40-28 at Leichhardt. Then one of the lowest, if not the lowest moments, I was in Santorini. We lost to Cronulla 58-6. And then finally, I was in Croatia. We lost to South 42-28. So 2 wins followed by some really, really shitty losses. Aside from, as I said, the second half against the Dragons and Spoon Bowl, Cronulla was easily our lowest point. This was the point in the season where the stats match up, where we were harnessing the majority of our energy into our attack as opposed to worrying about defense and our line speed, and what actually made us a half-decent team in the first quarter of the season. We swung the ball wide because of our atrocious yardage game. And in the Canberra, Melbourne and South games, it worked. The flip side was that defensively, we began to produce molten hot dog shit. This was also the point of the year when the senior players began to take a holiday. Stefano phoned it in hard. I remember he was tanking basically to ensure that he wasn't picked for New South Wales. Bateman was blasting rookies in team meetings, and Aiden Caesar was nowhere to be seen. So this year also, this part of the year actually saw the return of Adam Dwaihi, however you pronounce it, who was the hero against Canberra, and then for the next couple of weeks was made an example of against Suburbs and Cronulla, as does happen with Adam Dewey in any team worth their weight, mate. Those games against, I'm not even going to say the Titans game because that was ugly, but the Canberra game and even the South game and arguably the Melbourne game, we showed at that point that we had some amazingly bright sparks. I remember that Talon came back into grade and he was exceptional. This was when Locke really started to just get the ball and just, throw, look short, play long, or look long, play short, or, he'd play out the back, or he'd take the line on, or he'd support well, and he was exceptional. Jareen Buller had some really good moments in this part of the year. Fanua Bole had his best period of the year. Obviously, the Cronulla game was disgusting, and I don't want to gloss over that. We were atrocious, and our defense at this point, we conceded far too much. But this was the point where it was like, oh, okay, all right. With your reinforcements coming and a tough preseason and a couple more recruitments, you can see the green shoots. Do you agree?
Yeah, sort of. I agree. I agree in principle that the youth in this team had a good season, all of them. You transplant the rookies in this side, all of them, into another team's roster, and let's say hypothetically they all played the same amount of games and they got the same amount of run in another team, and that's anyone would be happy with that. Like, those guys performed well by any metric for a rookie class. Like, that was a generational rookie class, frankly, given how many we brought through. So I agree with you that in that respect. And Bole and Bull, I agree. Where I kind of feel like that every shit team wins games, man. Right? Like, you're gonna win a game here or there. And
Yeah.
I remember before that Titans game, everyone, like, we're obviously on a massive losing streak. And I was like, I think this is the one. And it wasn't because I had, faith in the team. It wasn't because I thought that we were going to be, like, I saw signs of improvement. It was because the Titans were arse, man. Like, so bad at that time of year. Like, I remember even saying it to you and you were like, oh, no, they've been in games and this and that. And I was like, they can't score. You know what I mean? Like, and they were kind of like, for us this year, the anti-Dragons, in that, like, their weaknesses, their strengths don't play into our weaknesses the same way. They don't have the big outside backs that can, like, take advantage of our feeble outside backs defense. They're an agility side, a speed side, but they had weakness in the halves. They didn't have cohesion. They're new. They don't have a big dominant pack to get on top of us. They were obviously missing their inspirational forwards leader. like he was out for the season. So I kind of just picked that one, and I was just like, I feel like they're just gonna, especially because that was Leichhardt, right? That game
Yeah.
was, yeah. If you look at our results this year, we actually almost split our home games, which is that's one of the most underrated signs that I came out of this year. Actually seemed like we actually played better at home. And that was like
Yes.
good. Because if you can improve again at home next year, and actually win more than your fair share of games at home, it goes a long way to actually, making the 8 and improving and getting more wins. I agree with you that the Canberra game was awesome. Like that was I felt like the Sharks game earlier in the year was just a little bit of a fever dream. It's early in the year. Crazy shit kind of happens early in the year sometimes. And the Sharks, they kind of just walked into a weird ambush that day. But Canberra had everything to play for. Canberra had, they were in the running for the 8. They, I think they'd come off wins, if I wasn't mistaken. I think that if I remember correctly, they had won their last 2 games or something like that. And they had it all to play for, and we turned up. Like that's the one game this year where I feel like we genuinely turned up until the Manly game later that we'll talk about. So all up, I would say, results there weren't a shock to me. The Roosters flogging, losing to Melbourne the way we did, while admirable, is sort of typical because this side over the years has developed an identity. The Tigers have developed an identity, and you see it because it doesn't matter which teams are good or which teams are bad. We always play the same teams the same way. Like it's like identity versus identity. We have an identity in our side that seems to compete with the play style of Melbourne and seems to compete with the play style of the Panthers. It doesn't compete with the play style of the Roosters. It doesn't compete with the play style of the Broncos. It doesn't compete with the play style of, the Dragons of 2024 who had an identity shift under Flanagan. So like teams that have this like bigger, stronger, I'm going to get on top of you and dominate you mentality to the game with some flair off the back, flog us stupid. Teams that want to actually get in the battle and like beat you with this war of attrition strategy and not actually get on top of us mentally throughout the contest, we actually seem to stay in the battle with and eventually sometimes eke out results against. So all that to say, I don't know if I would see like too much going on this year. That's at that time of the year is all that different to the rest of it. Like it was just a couple of, one really good result though. One really good result.
Yeah, agreed.
Adam Dwyer coming back was.
Oh, that was the catalyst for that wonderful performance.
The highlight of the year when he outran KO Weeks.
Known for his defensive resolve, Adam Dwyer.
I still think that we should trial him in the pack, but anyway.
Too soft. All right, last quarter of the season, we went down to the Warriors 28-16 across the Dutch. We lost to North Queensland 48-30 in what was another freakish game against these two between these two teams. We lost to Newcastle 34-18, and then beat South 18-16 in one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. We beat Manly in a pretty incredible performance, 34-26, and then capped off our season after a bye with a loss in Spoon Bowl and with a score that read 60-26. Okay, so 2 wins, 4 losses, some absolutely brilliant attacking performances, even in Spoon Bowl. Genuinely, I thought we attacked really well, but every single defensive showing was insipid. Okay. You just cannot concede anything more than 24 points and expect to do anything of note in the NRL. And that's what happens. There were periods in all games where we showed glimpses. There was a lot of, enigmatic performances from youngsters and some other footballers. But again, no defensive resolve to go on with it. At this point, the inexperience showed, as did the fact that the senior players just didn't pull their weight. and we just failed to get into the grind at any point. That was even the games that we won. Like we just didn't. What I will say though is that I am still extremely impressed by the fact that during that Manly game we possessed the mental resolve to get back into that game when we were down. I think it was 8-0, 12-0, 16-0. There was nothing to play for, and this was a team that was gunning for top 4. We showed that night what we could do. But on the other side, we also showed what we can do when things go wrong. And I am somebody that has defended Benji Marshall in the past, and I still don't know whether or not he's a good coach or a shit coach, but he got spoon bowl on our preparation completely wrong. Do you agree with my my sentiments?
Yeah. I think the last point you made was very accurate. You could kind of see from the first set that like Parramatta had a very simple idea of how they were going to win that game, and it was just to bash the shit out of us in the first 5 minutes and throw us out like off any kind of like game plan. They basically just went, we've had a shit year. You guys are all like mature, experienced first graders playing against a bunch of rookies and dudes who are leaving the club or the club doesn't want. Just go and bash them and make them not want to be there. And it worked. It was that simple. And like that, a lot of teams did that to us throughout the year. And a lot of teams seem to do that to us every game they play us every year. That's what the Roosters do to us every time they play. Just go and beat them up. Just you're better than them. You're more experienced. They're shit. Go smash them.
Yeah.
And Benji needed to, and it was my thought that was what was going to happen, was come out with the same mentality, like actually take it to them, smash them, Samuel Afinu, go hard at somebody, pick a fight, like pick a dude and go ape shit and do what what's his name did to Blore, did to Brown. That it was Blore, wasn't it? Blore. Yeah. Do that. Pick somebody. Go after RCG. He's leaving the club. Make him not want to be there for the final game. Don't give him a nice send off. Make his life miserable. Like, I don't think Benji's that kind of coach though, and I don't think anybody there is that kind of coach. I don't think they have that kind of person in that coaching group that would actually maybe Heino. No, not really. I don't think so. I don't really think that. I don't think they have that guy like that Roy Simmons kind of dude that'll like grab a member of the pack and be like, go out there and rip somebody's testicles off. And we miss that, like from like a specific, pre-game game planning kind of mentality. The Manly game was freaking sweet, but a part of me feels like we might be in for a very funny next few seasons up against Manly, because I kind of have a sneaking suspicion Luke Brooks is going to shit himself every time he plays us. I just have a sneaking suspicion that his Tigers curse is going to extend to playing against us too. I just have
the hex.
I feel like, well, remember that one point in that game where he was just he had the ball and he was just running with it and it just like flew out of his hands directly into Galvin's hands. I think it was Galvin.
Yeah, it was black magic.
It was black magic. Oh, Luke Brooks, man. He's gonna retire and he's gonna have PTSD whenever he sees the color orange, mate. He probably already does. He probably has dreams that are just orange, the color orange, just like haunting him and waking up in a cold sweat. But yeah, I mean, by this time of the year, obviously, like, it's hard, man. It's real tough to get up for any games. You're out of the running. You're still playing players in the run-on side who know that they're trying to be moved on. You're missing heaps of players through injury, although the 2 wins there at the end coincided with the return of Junior Tupu and Isaiah Papali'i from long-term injuries. Two players who are leaving.
But it also proves the fact that when we had these players on the field, we were
a good team. Yeah, if we had a full strength side all year, yeah, we would have finished 9th. But
we didn't.
But whoever does, you know what I mean?
Well, it's a squad game, mate, and
it's a squad game. Yeah, exactly.
hasn't been good enough to deal with
And that's
any
why
sort
I'd
of
be
adversity. Everybody from Jersey 19 down to 30, 36 and into the training trials, it's just like with all due respect to the playing group, it's just not good enough.
Yeah, it's not good enough it's not good enough at the top, but it's not good enough in the middle, and it's not good enough at the bottom. But that's that's why we came last. And that's we fixed that. We have gone out and signed one of the best players in the NRL. And and I agree with you what you said before. We are still missing the power middle. Freak, man, we should not have backed out of that Adam Fanua-Blake negotiation. Like, imagine where we would be right now if we had made that signing and still let Seth walk. Like the side, I'd be looking at the roster right now and going, we can actually top 4. Like, no shit. I agree with you that much. I think that is a big missing piece of this team. But yeah, I do think that the signs are promising. The rookies, hopefully we, these are a different breed of rookies, aren't they? Like, they don't strike me as the sort of rookies that are going to fall in a heap. They don't strike me as the sort of rookies that are going to have second-year syndrome. I don't see that from Lachlan Galvin. I don't see that from Luke Lowley. I don't even see it from Mason. I think that they're all going to progress at a rapid rate together. I think it's going to come good. And, we probably are going to, I'd say we're going to improve next year. I do think so. I think we'll improve. I don't know if we'll make the top 8, but I think we'll improve.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, there's still some recruiting to do, and there's things that we'll discuss when the time comes. Knowing what we know now and looking back with that statistical analysis and the gift of hindsight and all the games that we watched. Let's go through. I'm not going to talk about Hino. He's an effort areas coach. I don't even know what the fuck that means. He failed. Was Farah moving on the right call? You said something along the lines of, we had to shift the ball and, we had a lot of players in motion because we had no choice because our yardage game was atrocious. But obviously it showed that we could adapt to that. That's what I would say on the opposite side of the argument. Like if Robbie had Skelton, Taruba, a fit Justin Olam, Jareen Buller another year older and potentially a Marcelo Montoya or a Brian Toto, would our attack have been even better? Again, as you said, his heart might not have been in it, but was it the right call?
If we moved him on, probably not, because he was our attacking coach and our attack was the only part of the team that would have even got a C on the scorecard. So if we chose to kick him on, move him on the surface, you would have to say that was a silly decision. However, I don't believe that's the case. I believe he moved himself on because I don't think he wants to be a coach. And if that's the case, then so be it. There's not much you can do about that. The man doesn't want to be a coach. He's going to leave the team. There may be a conversation there about why, bro? You did all right. But if your heart's not in it, your heart's not in it. And Robbie Farah strikes me as a international man of leisure, my friend. He does not strike me as an assistant coach for an NRL club.
Yeah, he's a Euro summer guy, isn't he, Robbie?
Correct.
You can see him in Malta.
Yeah, it's that. I'm surprised you didn't bump into him in Santorini.
Well, he was he's showing the boys how on play 3 we need to spread the ball wide through those winter months.
No, I thought that our coaches went on tropical holidays in the middle of the season as though it was a normal thing, though.
But that was in Melanesia.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it wasn't that far.
Yeah, that's right. He made that sacrifice, bro. Benji made that sacrifice.
I don't know. I mean, Robbie Farah. It seems to me. I actually said a while ago that I feel like the Tigers need to get the culture right in the dressing room, and the best way to go about that is to actually utilize the players that have actually been there and seen the West Tigers at their best and performed at their best. I didn't think they'd take me. I didn't think that they'd see things that that way, the same way I did, like to the degree that they have. Like it's like they're only hiring from the West Tigers ex-player pool. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the Hodgson appointment at a later date, but yes, I won't lie. I'm disappointed about it, and I think that we really needed an experienced assistant coach that has head coaching experience in the NRL, and there are a few that you can pick the eyes out of. You know, Michael Hagan comes to mind. Neil Henry comes to mind. You know, I think, you know, Jason Demetriou comes to mind. You know, I think we had a chance to get a fresh pair of eyes away from the Tigers DNA, and you knew the club knew that they were going to cop a hiding in the press when they said in the press release that there was a process where there was a, you know, 30-odd applicants to a short list of 8. Like, God, I reckon the short list of 8 would have featured fucking Matt Jobson, Matthew Reek, Robert Miles, Ray Cashmere, Brian Hyder. Like, you know.
Who was the last name?
Brian Hyder. He was the old conditioning coach before Steve Folkes came in. Like,
my God.
Yeah, like anybody that was affiliated with 2005 sans Shane Elford because he's actually at a good franchise would have been given a call. Like that's anyway. Look,
it's weird. I think though, what's strange to me is this idea that the coaching team has like. Why does it have to be 4 people or 3 people? Why can't it be 5, 6? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't mind the idea of having Hodjo around the side. I don't mind that idea at all. Hodjo's arguably the most heroic player in the club's history. Like, he might not be the champion of the club like Benji, but Hodjo is probably the real soul of the club during its best years. Like, he was the man. He was the captain. Not the premiership, but in the years after, he was the player of the finals in the 2005. Like he won us most of the games in the final series. He was the best contributor. So I don't mind the idea of having him around the team. I don't mind the idea of him being the, like, let's say a general assistant coach. Yeah. But if he's walking in there to be a new attacking coach and that's the appointment and that's all, like, I don't get that. I don't understand why. Like, why not bring him in and bring somebody else in too?
Yeah. Well, the other assistant coach, and, you know, he does have head coaching experience, is John Morris. I think that our defense and our attitude, and again, our defense may have fell off a cliff because they wanted to sell all these players. You know, and our attitude fell off a cliff, but at the same time, the stats are the stats, and we just weren't good enough defensively. I saw some glimpses in those early parts of the season, but again, by the end of the year, we didn't know how to defend. We didn't win the collision. Our wrestling wasn't good enough. You know, the way, you know, in terms of mitigating, you know, teams making meters. I mean, for God's sake, we conceded the 3rd most amount of run meters in the entire league. You know, this is all to do with defense. Is John Morris, like, I feel as if the blowtorch isn't being applied to John Morris. Should the blowtorch be applied to John Morris?
I don't think so, man. And here's why. Because I think that the defensive issues of the Tigers were mostly typified by 2 things. The fact that we're giving the opposition the ball 40 meters out from their own line every time. And Stefano Utoikamanu was probably the worst defensive prop. That was just like a starter that did 40 a game of any player in the NRL. Like, he was abysmal in the middle defending. He it would come up on the missed tackle stat sheet so much because he didn't even put his hands on them. You know what I mean? Like, he was, like, for a man of his size who can smash people running, never hits any prop hard in defense. He doesn't feature in, like, the middle when you're looking at strong defensive middle play at the Tigers. You think of Clemmer. You know, Clemmer will actually, like, do a dominant tackle from time to time. Twal will do a dominant tackle from time to time. Utoikamanu was hiding. And then
what was the sign that was hanging up in the Parramatta dressing room on Spoon Bowl?
Yes, exactly.
Like horrendous in contact or something, and he was.
Yes, he was. But the Parramatta when I saw that sign in the dressing room, I was like, thank you, Parramatta. You have validated everything I thought about Stefano Hukamano's defense. And Fonua Bole, for all his talent, is a little bit of the same mold. Like, he's a good attacking forward. I don't think
he's got some issues.
I think he's got a bigger heart than Uto.
But no. I just mean defensively. But at the same time,
no, that's what I'm saying.
I wasn't playing injured.
I wasn't saying, I wasn't disagreeing with you. I was just pointing out a different fact. Yes, I think, he has more spirit, but he is equally kind of different, but different defensive issues. So yeah, I don't think I put the blame on John Morris whatsoever. I don't think he's out there making the tackles. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that he's the one that carried it. I don't think he's the one that dashed the spirit of the club, and defense is spirit. If more so than any other aspect of the game, defense comes down to want and willingness and heart and spirit. It's the part of the game that can be mostly influenced by rah-rah bullshit, and conversely can be damaged by, your morale and your will to play being dashed by being told that you're not going to be at the club, or thinking that you're maybe not going to be at the club, or your mate being told that he's not going to be at the club. Like, I can't fault John Morris. I know defense was our biggest issue, and he was our defensive coach. But I would blame Shane Richardson for it before I would blame John Morris.
And furthermore, you can also blame it on Benji Marshall, given that the attitude of the side, began to, suffer. So, and typically with those things, the buck stops with the head coach, and that's who we're going to talk about. That's who we're going to talk about.
Sorry, I just want to finalize that point by saying, when we were breaking down the strengths and the weaknesses and the issues with the attack, we could pinpoint systemic problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, issues with decision-making, game planning. When we were breaking down defense, it's just stats that say we're bad, and it's just players making mistakes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that's why I think that John Morris can have a stay of execution. I wouldn't give him a pass mark, but I wouldn't blame him.
Good call. Good response. And quite frankly, for the record, I was asking quite simply, does he deserve the blowtorch? I don't think that he does either. Because again, I think that we saw something at the beginning of the year that you basically, in your review, in your wash up, you say, all right, hang your hat on that. Build to that again, and let's make sure we do it for 24 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Or longer, but obviously
preferably.
West Tigers and the postseason is like oil and water. Benji Marshall, where are you at with him? And try not to ensure this takes all night. Where are you at?
I'm cautiously optimistic, honestly. Like everyone, I, have a few beers under me after a loss, and I want to lay the slipper into everyone. But in the cold light of day, I always come back to, I see signs of greatness in him as a coach. I do. I see signs of greatness in him as a coach. I see a confidence, like there's an aura to him that I think that you can see is rubbing off on the younger players. I think that he's making some intelligent choices about where to focus on. When John Bateman came out and was like, Benji's like, blowing smoke up the asses of the young players and stuff, I was like, good. That's what he should be doing.
And what he also did in that instance was light a fire under the senior players and said, you aren't pulling your weight.
Yeah, and John Bateman, being the fucking mental midget that he is, took the lesson wrong. And instead of turning around and being a leader and taking the coach's word and then being an inspirational leader and showing what that word was supposed to mean, he catted it and had a cry. So, John Bateman, I hope you're listening to this. And if you come back to this club, I hope you realize that your sub-90 IQ needs to freaking be put on the shelf, and you need to actually understand your place in the squad. Like, you are not, a marquee player. You're not a marquee player anymore. You are a mature veteran leader of the club, and act like it. Going home to England halfway through the year with your tail between your legs ruined the season for all of the young guys. I just don't understand it. I don't understand. Like, I hope you don't come back. But if you do better, mate. Do better.
Yeah. All right. Well, swinging back to Benji, I want to point something out. So while we got the spoon, I actually saw a lot of similarities, and I'm not saying we're going to have the exact same turnaround that they have had, but I saw a lot of similarities in the 2023 Bulldogs in the 2024 Tigers. Okay, we got trounced on our route in our first game of the year after so much fanfare and being heralded as a new era. That happened the exact same thing to the Dogs. The week after, they played a premiership heavyweight in Melbourne. They beat them 26-12. We trounced the Sharks. We made them look incompetent. The week after they played us, they beat us 26-22. We played Parramatta. We beat them 17-16. Now, they had a lot of periods where they just went back and forth. Now, they had more wins than us, don't get me wrong. But as time went on towards the end of the season, it felt as if that Ciraldo was not getting buy-in from the players that he required. There was the Jackson Topine scandal. There was a lot of players heading for the exits. And quite frankly, Ciraldo, who was renowned for his defense, it ended up not being good enough. And we had heard that Benji Marshall, I know he was never a defensively minded player, but the preseason was built on defense. He wanted to build this club on defense. He wanted to make us a sustainable footballing franchise through our defense. Now, once again, I'm not saying that we are going to have the exact same uplift as we did as the Bulldogs, but there were a lot of tribulations that were very, very similar and a lot of high moments that were similar too. Now, again, I don't know whether or not Benji Marshall is a coach's arsehole or whether or not he's a head coach. I don't know that because I only have a small sample size. And I think that people are a little bit too quick to judge. As you say, I think cautious optimism is fair. Yes, he doesn't have the apprenticeship. Yes, we only won 6 games this season. Yes, we ran last. I get it. I see it. But at the same time, similar to yourself, the aura that he has, the players that he's attracted, the buy-in that he's got from these younger players, the fact that they were playing for him every single fucking week, and they were during Spoon Bowl. Okay, they were. The Cronulla game and the Dragons second half, yes, that was terrible. But during Spoon Bowl, he got that preparation wrong, as opposed to building it up like a finals game, putting all of our energy in defense and making sure that they did not lose that game defensively. He said, I'll just go out there, boys, and have fun. They were hanging on to his every word. Now, if he fixes that, and I think he will have no choice but to fix it because Shane Richardson was livid on the touchline that night.
Mm-hmm.
And there's and some additional quality coming in. Jerome Luai, Jarrell Skelton, Sania Taruva, Royce Hunt. Jack Bird, I think, will be a good signing, providing that he does the role that we need him to do, and that's, 25, 30 minutes, supplementing the back line, the edge, and potentially the middle. Plus with some additional recruiting. We are not done. I want to preface that statement. I think that we will begin to see green shoots, and I think that Benji Marshall and Shane Richardson will be front and center of that. And I'm more than happy to eat humble pie if he is sacked 8 or 12 weeks in the season, because Richardson will not suffer or tolerate a poor win record. He's already said there's no excuses. So with that in mind, we look to the future, and hopefully Marshall can work on a few of his shortcomings, as you said, getting a forward up and grabbing him by the ears and getting him revved up and to put the team on his back and to ensure that, it's not just about having fun and that, it's a professional footballing franchise and we need to fucking win games.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand when you're coaching for the first time, like in business or in sport, when you're coaching players for the first time that you haven't met, whether it's because they're rookies or whether it's because they're signings, you can't just go straight for the rah-rah stuff. You have to develop a rapport with them, especially kids of the generation that are coming through. Like they will just not respond to you unless they can actually, they feel that you're on their side. Like they will not respond to constructive criticism unless they like you, unless they feel that you're on their side. So in a lot of ways, I think that Benji seems like he's really smart when it comes to the way he treats people. And he's learned from the master of that in Wayne Bennett. So that's that's why I have cautious optimism about him as a coach, and also like let's be serious for a minute. Like Benji Marshall wants to be the head coach of the West Tigers. Like you can see it in him. Like sure, he goes on holidays to Fiji. Okay, he's pussy whipped. Plenty of people pussy whipped, like he lets his wife, wear the pants when it comes to, the family planning. So he has to go to Fiji. Okay, that's a little bit cringe. I don't love it,
No.
but I'll tolerate that. But he has a serious drive and a serious passion. I think that he's inspired by Wayne Bennett. I think Wayne Bennett is his idol and his role model, and he's shaping himself on Wayne Bennett. And I think that I don't think he'll stop until he makes it work. I don't think he will. Like he might get dragged out of the nest kicking and screaming if it fails, but he's not gonna die trying. I have confidence in the man, and I have confidence in what I'm seeing, and I have confidence in Lachlan Galvin, and I have confidence in Jerome Luai. So yes, I have optimism for next year.
Very nice. Grand final. Let's talk about grand final. Just really quickly, what do you think? How do you see it playing out?
Melbourne should win. Melbourne are a supreme team this year. They are excellent. Nelson will be a loss, no doubt. He's not like, a premium prop in the NRL anymore, but he's still a big presence in the middle, especially in a grand final when he only has to get up for one more game. Like he would have been huge. But it's not like Penrith. They've got James Fisher Harris, but he's a juggernaut kind of prop, not like a Man Mountain type. So it's not like Nelson and him would have collided in any kind of meaningful way. So I still think Melbourne, like Pappenhausen's back in top shape. Jerome Hughes is probably the best player in the league right now on form. Munster is Munster. Harry Grant is, seems like he's in career best form. When you've got a spine firing like that, up against a spine that's firing like Penrith, it's going to be an absolute cracker. That's all I know. I just do think Melbourne have a bit more quality than Penrith, which is strange to say because obviously Penrith are. See you, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously Penrith are the triple. They've had the hat trick and they're going for the 4P, which is incredible. But across the park, I think Melbourne are a better side, position to position. Cleary, in most games you look. Well, in most games, you look at Nathan Cleary and you say, oh, that's a clear mismatch when he's playing against whoever. But look on the other side of the field. You got who's probably going to be the Dally M halfback of the year up against him. Cameron Munster, you go, who's he? Who's the Cameron Munster or Luai? That's a bit of a push, really, isn't it? Pappenhausen versus Edwards. Maybe Edwards is a better player or like on the over a longer period of time. But I think Pappenhausen's the form fullback in the NRL over the last 6 weeks. Harry Grant's clearly a better dummy half than Kenny. So, like, their spine's better. Their outside backs match up well. Maybe, I think Melbourne are just such a good side at getting max value out of players like Nick Meaney, players like Sean Bloor, what they've done converting that young back rower into a centre. Like I just think, Howarth. I think Melbourne, but I'm not confident. I feel like it's like a 1918 grand final classic either way, something like that.
I'm going to take the opposing view. So while I think Melbourne have been the best team all year and their spine is electric, I just think that, first of all, Penrith are made for this time of year. It's really interesting. They're like everything that Melbourne should have been 10 years ago. So and they were through the regular season, but, in the first weekend of October, a side that'll go 7-7 where you're down, but just has this sheer footballing of brilliance that they possess with Edwards, Cleary, Luai. and there's a handful of individuals that'll just tear you apart and they will just wear you down. And once again, like they've been amazing all year, Melbourne, but Nash he's their enforcer, and they needed him there because the last three grand finals, you just see Fisher, Harris, and Liotta go to work. They are amazing footballers, and the amount of hurt that they put on you in defence is just insane. And like Christian Welch played 8 minutes last week. 8 minutes. Do you think Belzer trusts him at the moment? This Valepu, I hope he has a great game. Obviously 6 games, and into his career, and I wish him the best. But fuck, like you think he's going to be able to deal with Liotta, Fisher, Harris, Liam Henry, Lindsay Smith? Like these boys have been playing like business end footy forever. Like again, I would love. I sitting here purely as a neutral, I'm more than happy with either side winning. I don't really mind. I just want to see a good game of footy. I think Munster has been really, really quiet, and I think that if Melbourne win, it will be off the back of his brilliance. I will say that. I just think he's primed. I think he's had a couple of moments in the last couple of years in big games that he would have liked to have had back. The preliminary final last year against Penrith wasn't good enough. He lost a Test series final 30-0. He obviously lost Origin this year. I just feel as if he might just take this game by the scruff of the neck. But again, on the opposite side of the field is the best halfback possibly I've ever seen. So there's that to contend with as well. Look, gun ahead, I think Penrith win. I do. I know people don't want to hear that because it's going to be for a 4th straight year, but I just can't see them losing this one. If Nelson was playing, it might have been different, but again, I just can't see a different result.
I don't mind the 4-peat. Like, I think that would be cool. It would be good to see modern history in real time. I just think, really, like Melbourne and Penrith, every time they play in the last few years, every time they play, they turn up like it's a grand final because they know it's a very high likelihood to be, a grand final preview every time they play. So Melbourne beat Penrith 2 times this year, 5 months apart from one another. So earlier in the year, they beat them 8-0. Late in the year, they beat them 24-22. Both tight contests, both finals-like atmospheres. Melbourne have gone top of them 2 times. Last year, they played 3 times and Penrith won 3 times. So if there's like an indicator there that favors Melbourne, I think it might be that. I think that Melbourne have kind of developed a way to, prevent Penrith from doing what Penrith do best and still do what they need to do to win. So, yeah, it's going to be a classic. It'd be nice to see some different teams in there for a change, but it's hard to argue with a 1v2.
I hope so, man. All right, give me a Clive Churchill medal and give me a scoreline. Actually, give me a scoreline instead of Clive.
Yeah, so 1918, Melbourne to win. I say through a Munster field goal. I know, they've got a few field goal exponents, but I feel like, I'll go with your Munster prediction. I think Hughes for the Churchill.
Nice. All right, I've got Penrith 16-12, and I've got Isaiah Yeo man of the match. Mate, I think we're done. I think that was a pretty comprehensive wrap, and with a little bit of grand final related shit talk at the end. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Sorry it's been so long between a European holiday and a new job. Mac just hasn't been able to get a hold of me. So thank you all for coming back, and we'll see you next week, and we'll review the players. Which group of players, I'm not too sure, but we'll discuss soon. All good with you,
Thanks very
Mac?
much. Yeah, thanks very much. And once again, if anybody's interested, getpinch.com.au, online payment system to help small businesses get on top of their cash flow. So thanks for the studio, boss. And thank you, Reedy, for coming back. And let's not be strangers. Let's keep this ball rolling.
I agree, brother. Send me that audio file and I'll get this thing out quick smart. Bye-bye.
See ya.